Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries, and in this video response I'm going to be addressing the thoughts raised in Jenny Green's video response, where she talks about ways to build confidence for Hangout role-playing. Now, this is my second video response to someone else's video response, so I'm pretty sure that means I've moved down to a different level of reality. However, moving on, I think there are a number of different things that you can do to increase your confidence levels when it comes to Hangout role-playing, and quite a few of these have already been addressed in Jenny's video, and she makes some very good points in there. I would say for myself, probably one of the best ways to raise your confidence is to actually play in some Hangout role-playing sessions before you start to even think about GMing them. That way you become familiar with the format of how a Hangout game differs from a more personal face-to-face tabletop game. You can become a bit more familiar with how the technology works, the various apps, dice rollers, etc., that can be used to make a more smooth gaming experience, and many other little bits and pieces that what may not seem initially apparent, but that may become so once you actually get into a game. It's far better that you, in my opinion, encounter these as a player, when the GM and the other players, who will presumably be more experienced than yourself, will be able to help you out, rather than you jump straight in as a GM, encounter these problems, get a bit flustered, or even worse, get put off the experience of Hangout gaming and don't continue with it. So I think that will be my first point: playing a game before you decide to actually GM a Hangout game. The other handy thing, if you're intending to GM any Hangout games at any point, is just to actually do some non-gaming Hangouts, even if they're just chats with people about particular subjects, whether they be RPG related or otherwise. Again, it's all about familiarizing yourself with the Google Plus Hangout technology, how it runs, and how you think you can apply that to your game. I certainly know there's a lot of stuff. For instance, take the various different overlays that can be used on your screen if you're running a Google Plus Hangouts. I've got one just there with Red Dice Diaries. I've got my video response there, the red dice there, another little bit in piece there. But certainly I had no idea how to do any of that when I first started running Hangouts. And it was by talking to other people who were a little bit more experienced, and when I was playing in their games and asking them a few questions here and there, and asking people questions on Facebook, that I was able to work it out. And I've got to the level where I now feel comfortable running games, and I have one campaign running online at the minute. I've run a couple of other one-off or very short sort of mini campaigns online, and hope to do some more in the future. I've also been lucky enough to play in a few games, some of very short duration, some of campaign length. I'm playing in Jenny's Advanced Finding Fantasy game, Broken Jade, at the minute, which is very good, and I'm looking forward to her one-off that she's going to run in the future, and hopefully being a part of that if my schedule permits. But ask questions from people who know more about it than you. Most people who you ask will be only too willing to share the information and the knowledge that they have with you, since they'll remember the times that they themselves didn't know that either, and they had to ask other people. And it's in the best interests of the hobby and all of us that more people become interested in Hangout gaming and become more comfortable with running it, since it allows us to expand the hobby to areas where maybe there's not a full-time gaming group available, or where people can't meet up around a table and actually throw some dice together. It's a great way of bringing people in maybe more remote locations, but who have access to the internet, into the hobby. It also allows people from maybe old game groups that have drifted apart or moved to different areas to get together and throw some dice together once more. However, beyond all of these different ways that you can boost your confidence, And as I say, it's just a matter of becoming more comfortable with it, since people naturally tend to be more comfortable and more confident with something they're familiar with. But beyond that, once you get to a certain stage, it really does just become a case of taking the plunge and jumping in. It's very much like face-to-face role-playing gaming in that manner. At a certain point, if you want to be a GM, you have to just pick up those books and run your first session, and sink or swim, you then find out what happens after that. And there's no shame whatsoever if you run your first Hangout game and it's not the best game in the world, the pinnacle of role-playing excellence. There's no shame in that at all. I'd be surprised if you met anyone who, when they ran their first session, whether it be tabletop, whether it be Hangout gaming or whatever, was entirely happy with the way that first session went. We all learn and improve as we go along. And as when you first started GMing in more traditional tabletop, Google Plus Hangouts is just a different, slightly different way of role-playing that you have to get used to. And there's a few more things you have to learn, a few things you maybe have to unlearn from more traditional face-to-face gaming that maybe don't work quite as well when it comes to the Hangout environment. As Jenny was saying, there's a limit to what you can do in this sort of square window. You can't stand up and pace around and get all the expressions and the body movements that you can get with a face-to-face game. It becomes much more about what you can do with your hands and your face and your voice, etc. And I certainly know that myself, I find myself being more expressive with my hands whenever I do a Hangout, since, as I said, you can only see this much of me in a Hangout window. So that would be my advice if you maybe need to build up a little bit of confidence in Hangout gaming. First of all, get yourself playing in as many Hangouts as possible before you decide to GM. Build up familiarity with how Google Plus Hangouts works, and that'll get a few ideas going as to how you can use different bits and pieces in your own games, and it will get you more comfortable with it, and that will build your confidence. As Jenny said, you can also run Hangouts without putting them on air, although that does mean that you wouldn't then be able to go back and look at them afterwards. One thing I might suggest as a potential halfway house with that is, if you set up a Hangout on air, you can set the video to be private on your linked YouTube channel. And that means that you can look back over the video output and maybe find out some things that you want to improve or what you did well, but other people outside your channel won't be able to look at it. Or you can set it so that only people you send the link to will be able to access it, if you want to give selective people an avenue to watch it and provide you with feedback. Another thing I would say is, when you do decide to take the plunge and GM your first game via Hangouts, don't be too hard on yourself, but do try and collect constructive feedback from the people who are playing in it. And don't be upset if they come back and say, oh, well, I don't think this really worked, or maybe that could have been a bit better. Ask them for a few more details and try and look at it objectively, ignoring your initial emotional response, since it's not easy to have something that you've put a lot of effort into criticized or critiqued. I entirely understand that, but most people who give you feedback, if it's constructive, they do so because they genuinely want to help you improve your game. And if they care enough to bother giving you feedback rather than actually just going, oh, whatever, and walking off into the sunset, then it suggests they think there is some merit in your game and your style, and they want to see you improve, and they may even want to play in future games that you run. So try and take it on the chin a little bit. Listen to the feedback, try and look at it objectively, although I know it's not always easy, and see if you can take any of it into account and use it to improve your style in future games. And if you can do that, I'm sure before long you'll be much more confident, since you'll have addressed those issues, you'll be more familiar with Hangouts, and you'll be more easily able to run them. So I hope that that's been informative and useful to you. If you've enjoyed this video, please click on like, and you can subscribe by clicking on the red dice up there in the corner. If you have any comments, as always, put them down below or hit me up in the Google Plus links. Until I see you next time, thank you very much for watching and for listening. Take care.